What is up, YouTube? On this video on how to do it, we're going to be installing steel inner fender skirts from Scott Rod Fabrication for that smooth, clean engine bay look on your Foxbody Mustang. So stay tuned. In case you've been living under a rock, it is a super common modification to do to these Foxbody Mustangs to smooth out the engine bay to get rid of all the unsightly holes and also clean up the frame rail section here. So Scott Rod makes panels in aluminum and steel. They also make them back here for the firewall area, and they also make tons for all other American muscle cars, but they make really good products. I'm not endorsed by them in any way. I'm just sharing my experience, but check them out at scottrodfab.com. So otherwise, let's get straight to the video. Scott Rod panels, so if you want to walk through how to install these steel ones and weld them in and try to get them in properly, at least I think the way it's going to be properly, then stay tuned. That's what we're doing in this video right here. Now, as you can see from the last video, I just kind of showed some of the disassembly. We've done way more disassembly here now. I've went ahead and removed the wiper motor. We're going to be doing something trick with a wiper motor, thanks to Doug Yergin from the North Texas Foxbody Club. A little trick we'll be doing with that most likely. And I've also removed the clutch cable, and actually you can see here the clutch cable on a 79. I'm learning that 79 and 80 Mustang, actually I think 79, 80, and 81 has a completely different clutch pedal and cable than you would find on an 82 and up, or maybe 81 and up, because that uses a quadrant. So this doesn't have a quadrant, which means I have to source another clutch pedal to replace this, either clutch pedal itself or the whole pedal assembly. So also, while I was removing the clutch pedal, I went ahead and removed the seat on the driver's side, got it just kind of out of the way, and I went ahead and found the build sheet hiding underneath the seat, which is kind of cool. I wasn't expecting it. What's funny is I've seen pieces of the build sheet kind of throughout the car, and I found the rest of it hiding nicely under the seat. The seats are in awesome shape, but I'm definitely going to keep the build sheet. I think that's something pretty cool. All right. So I know I wasn't planning on filming right now. I'm out here. I'm still disassembling the car, and I've had to remove the seat so I can get underneath and get the clutch cable out. And lo and behold, I found what looks to be the build sheet. I wanted to wait for you guys. Everything else in the car has been in really good shape. All right. This is so neat. Up here in audio, you've got radios. S, I'm guessing, is stereo. You've got speakers for 4, which it is 4 stereo or 4 speakers. It says Goodyear 4, so it came with Goodyear tires, not Goodrich. So you have, it's like an option of General, Goodrich, Goodyear, Michelin, Uniroyal, Pirellis. I've also taken the time to remove the sway bar and the front bumper. So I did remove the sway bar, got everything off, got everything bagged and tagged, and then I went ahead and decided to go ahead and remove the bumper completely so I can get full access to the core support and start stripping it and getting everything ready for smoothing and paint and body, at least for the engine bay is concerned. That also lets me take the bumper out, clean it up, and then treat it with some rust prevention. Let's get right to this. So right off the bat, you can see we got some issues on this side anyway, so it doesn't matter, we're gonna cut it all out. So I went ahead and stripped the metal out to where, or stripped the paint down to where I'm gonna be needing to weld, and I've stripped a lot of the metal out around the core support too, but let me show you the worst of this here. So like I've mentioned before, these Scott Rod panels are gold right now. They're hard to find, they're back ordered. Everybody and their dog seems to be working on their cars and their projects, and these are hard to come by. So these will fit in just like this. We're gonna weld these things in. We're gonna get them in perfectly square and nice and smooth. But first thing we have to do is address this down here. Obviously we can't just hide that. I mean, we could, but that would be wrong. We're not gonna do this. We're gonna attempt to replace this piece here that is completely corroded from the battery tray. The battery tray sits right here, and the battery sits on top of the tray. Over the years, you know, just from it leaking and doing what batteries do best, this thing is completely corroded. The metal, and actually this is the only rust that I've found on the car that is actual rust and gone through. So we need to address this. Okay, so initially I was gonna use a spot weld cutter. I have a pretty nice spot weld cutter I used when I was doing the floors on my 86. To cut out the spot welds and actually take this centerpiece of metal here, because you can definitely see that it's spot welded along the seam here and along the seam here, but it's also spot welded up here because this piece is sandwiched between this section here and another section on the back side. They probably, you know, this panel goes across here. So you can actually see how it's really 3 pieces right here. And just to kind of keep from going through that mess and having to spot weld in between them and pull it out, we may want to try to just cut this whole section out. So when I put these Scott rod panels on, I'm not going to overlay it. I don't want to put it on top and over this. You technically can, but in my opinion, it's just, you know, it's extra metal you don't need. And it also gives you a little bit more room under the, you know, the wheel well area. So ideally what we really want to do is cut all this out. And since I'm going to cut this out here, I'm going to go ahead and make the cut and cut all this metal out, even through the channel here. Then whenever we put the Scott rod panel in, if I need to reinforce the, you know, the frame area, we'll do that as well when the Scott rod panel gets put in. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this section all the way out down here to the seam. We don't want to cut on the other side of this frame wheel here, because this is basically a square tube essentially. We don't want to cut that because that's, you know, essential or structural piece of the Mustang itself. So what we do want to do though is go ahead and cut this out, and because it gets bad all the way up into here as well, and of course this section is bad too. So what we want to do is cut this, and then once I make this seam cut, then we can cut the spot welds out where this top piece is seamed and spot welded onto the U channel down here. So that's the angle I'm going to go. I'm going to go ahead and chop this junk out as best as I can, and we'll just start working from there. This is just placing the panel in. The only reason I'm putting it in right now is just kind of get an idea of frame of reference. This is actually fitting really good on this side. I'm surprised. What I do want to do, I'm going to try to take this corner and tuck it underneath this piece here, so that way it looks more factory. So we're going to have to notch this down just a little bit probably to get that corner to fit. Underneath there's a seam right here on top where the whole front core is spot welded into on top of this frame rails. So I want this to go under and make it look more natural. But what I want to do is just kind of mark it, just so when I'm starting to cut this, I have a frame of reference. Now remember guys, I mean, this is obviously a no-brainer that you start cutting, and once you cut too much out, there's really no fixing it. So you always want to make smaller cuts. However, most of this metal is going out. I'm going to leave a good section, you know, around here probably, right about there. So it gives me some good metal to weld to. All the way down there. Okay, you can see right here, you don't want to cut into this necessarily because this is a structural component that goes up to this piece here. So you want to cut right in here. We're actually going to make the cut just down the line here, and we're going to go right below this seam, and we're going to go right along this seam here. So we're actually going to cut it along where the seams already are, and that's what we're going to do. What up, y'all? All right. Bye-bye. Sweet. So see how I was able to go right along the seam here. This gives me ample room now to replace and fix this area within here. All right, man, look at all that nastiness. Yeah, so that is all just rust and crud. Sick, man. Anyways, you gotta be careful cutting in here because obviously you got brackets here. These steel plates are for your sway bar mounts, so just kind of be careful. Obviously, it's rusted. I should be wearing gloves, Mike, so I don't get a tetanus shot, man. I've put it back in here after we cut the bottom piece out. And the reason being is because I want to probably try to incorporate the piece of steel down here into the Scott rod panel, okay? So I want to try to get this flush. So we're gonna make a flat piece of sheet to go across the bottom here, and then also go into this lip. So it's gonna weld on to either, I guess, the outside of it, or inside would probably be easier. But yeah, it's gonna weld on here, and then up, and then weld on top of the floor, and then right here on the panel. So that way it fills this gap up here. Now, I would like to have the lip go down. So the whole panel itself needs to move. I can't move it down anymore because we're to the point now where we need to start trimming up the Scott rod panel itself. We're hanging up on it right here, so it's a little bit tight right in here. So we need to just take what we're gonna do is take a grinder, a flap wheel, and we're just gonna slowly shave some metal off. I'm not gonna cut anything, because once the metal's removed here, it's gonna really look like crap. You try to put it back together. And again, I want this lip to go underneath here as possible. That's the lip I was talking about. So the edge of it will actually tuck underneath the core support strap here. So that's where I'm at. I want to try to get this thing in place so that I know how I want to make and box in this backside here. Yeah, man, there we go. That's starting to look good. Okay, so it's rubbing here. That's fine. I gotta get the cement metal off, and this is looking, oh yeah, it's looking better. Let me show you. Okay, so it's looking quite a bit better. Slowly shaving as we get this thing to tuck in closer to close off this gap and that gap right there. So we still have to come back a little bit, but what I don't want to do, I want to keep that lip down on it here, just like that. Okay, so definitely want to make sure that that lip stays on the outside of this edge of this, so that way it has a nice clean look to it. We can seam this, and yeah. right, so we got this plate in, looking a little bit better. So hopefully we'll get that burned in without any problems. I am calling this good because what's going on down here is looks pretty good. It's all solid, but I'm still getting into thin parts as I grind down these welds and try to make it look smooth. I'm thinning it out and I'm having to extend the welds out, so it's just getting ugly. I think at this point it's sturdy and strong. We're gonna rust prevent it on the front side, and then we can put body filler down here whenever we do the frame and chassis and paint it. So definitely looks better than it did before. But it's not perfect. I mean, it is what it is, guys. It's thin sheet where it started rusted out here. But the main part of the rust has been cut out and replaced. Middle back here is good. It is a little thin though. That's why I said if I would accidentally kind of burn through it, I had to patch well from the top end down there. But otherwise, we got some good heat penetration. And I say that's fixed. You're not going to see down there anyways because it's going to be covered. But man, what a beating. Just that little rust spot. And it's only because it gets so thin, man, when that metal is rusted out. I mean, I know this, you guys know this, but you know, it's easier said than done, trust me. So I'm using the same rust seal product here from KBS, and it is pretty good stuff, and it's also the same stuff I used on the cowl area back here. So the cowl has been treated. It's dirty now because it's got stuff on it. Anyways, we've got rust seal in the channel here because I figured why not? It's open, it's rusty, let's prevent it as much as we can. It's gonna have to wait probably 2 days to dry before we can go in here, weld in the channel, and actually get to welding in the the Scott rod panel. Alright guys, man, it's been about a week's worth of on and off work to get to the point where we're at now, and that's just because my car was a little bit rougher than most people would be. So we're got it to the point now where you need to decide how to put on your Scott rod panel. There's tons of ways to do it, but let me go ahead and show you what we've accomplished now to this point. So the channel has been replaced, we've repaired it, we've also repaired the steel on the bottom side and filled in the holes in the shock tower, so we're going to be really ready for body and paint. Let me show you what we got here. Alright, so this is spot welded in, this channel is spot welded in. I did go ahead and cut holes on the low spots on both sides and kind of put a taper in them because you do want some sort of drainage in here. It's not going to be completely sealed, you'll have water be able to get back through here, but we're going to go ahead and cover this with the rust prevention stuff as well. The back side was painted, but this will help keep at least some of the rust from sitting in this channel if water gets in there. So right now we've done this. I've gone ahead and filled in the holes. The rest we filled in was a metal filter and or a Bondo just to smooth it out and get it ready for paint, but all the holes have been welded up for the shock tower. I've got some more down here we need to finish up. Oh, most importantly, that hole is done. We finally put some thick plate and replaced that. So we are actually to the point to put the Scott rod panel in. Now let me show you how I think I'm going to tackle this, because right now at this point it really just depends on your preference, and it kind of also depends on the shape your car's in. So let's look at it. I've already trimmed a little bit on this corner here to get it to sit more flush into the pocket and kind of trim this. A little bit of the metal has been trimmed really on both sides with just a grinder. Now I want to make sure I want to get this lip up here underneath this section here, and that can easily be done just by kind of pushing on it like that. Okay, and like I said, at this point it just becomes preference. Now you can weld these things in, you can weld completely around, that's a ton of work, but you can completely weld them in, you can grind them through, but listen, I know my welding skills. I think the best thing to do is to try to spot weld this thing in the same way the factory would have done, and then seam seal it, and then once we seam seal it, you know, it could be painted over and have a nice waterproof seal on it. Also want to make sure this lip kind of goes over the edge. You can butt it up straight up against it, but if you realize these Foxbody channels here all have a slight curve to them. They're not perfectly straight. Your frame channels here, they kind of curve just a little bit in towards the nose, and both sides of mine do that, and I think it has something to do with, you know, probably, you know, crashing and having the frame fold up in certain places. Anyways, but yeah, it is certain that this was going to want to go on the outside, at least for aesthetic reasons. So I would like to put probably little holes in here and go ahead and get this out on the outside and spot weld it in. And then we'll run some spot welds on the corners here just to hold it in place. And then from the back side, we can weld this top section up. We can cut this groove out here. So like I said, at this point it is up to you. You can use an epoxy. I've seen guys just rivet these on to the existing. You don't necessarily have to remove the back, you know, section that I removed. The only reason that I did is because obviously you're not in great shape and I had rust to fix. So this has gone taken a lot longer than anticipated just because of the rust repair we had to do. But at this point you can absolutely use some sort of an epoxy glue and glue it on, a really high strength type epoxy if you had the back panels on, and then you can seam seal and do your body work on top of it. Or you can, you know, do what I'm going to do plug welds, or you can weld across. Anyways, it's up to you on how you affix this thing to your car and how you make it look like the way you want it to do. So I personally am choosing to do it the way that I know best. All right, guys, that is it. It's done. It's installed. That is pretty much it. So I went ahead and welded in the top seam, just to give it more of a seam, so it kind of make it look like one panel, and also welded the bottom here and ground it smooth. Now at this point, it's pretty much ready for an etching primer. Actually, it needs to be seam sealed first. I want to order some good 2-part epoxy resin, 3M seam sealer. So we'll need to seam seal all the seams here, the factory seams here, or let's say the seams from Scott Rod down here. Then it's kind of at that point ready for an etching primer to really get onto the metal and preserve it. And then we'll be able to do body work and smooth this stuff out, because it does have a little bit of dents and divots in it. But it's there, and I'm glad I took the time to go ahead and smooth it in, because I love how it does look like it is one piece. So a little metal filler can fill in some of these pinholes right here, or body filler, that'll fill it in no problem. Now let me show you what I go ahead and did on the back side. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it is functional and it works. So it has been tacked on Let me see if I can do this here. It's been tacked on here, all kind of around there. I went ahead and took that piece of steel, folded up, and tacked it in. Like I said, it's not pretty. I went ahead and put an angle iron here because I cut out a corner of the shock tower to get this to fit flush up against it. I didn't want to cut more of this because I like the hard angle that creates on this side. So the angle iron is here for strength, and it just kind of helps strengthen up this side of the shock tower like it was before. So obviously it's not pretty. This will need to be seam sealed on the back side as well. And then once this is seam sealed, this whole section will get painted as well with an undercoat paint or something like that. I don't really know yet. So I'm not sitting here telling you that I've got tons of experience installing things. I don't. This is the first time I've installed it, but I am here to tell you show you my experience and how it went, and show you guys, kind of the difficulty level. I would say, looking back at it now, definitely 100%, absolutely, without a doubt in my mind, glad that I cut out the old. Okay, this is just not going to work. Not only does this side not even fit with this panel here without it cut, it just doesn't seem right to me to put this over on top of metal. You're creating a section where moisture can get in, dirt, grime, and all that stuff, and all that is going to be causing rust down the line. So you don't want to do that. Go ahead and cut it out and put it in right. Now, if you go this far, whatever, a lot of people just tack them. A lot of people just rivet them. You could leave enough metal around the top here, and you can just rivet them in and paint it and call it done. So like I said, just because I did it this way doesn't mean it's the way you have to do it. I'm just showing you the experience here with Project EgoBruise and how we're coming along with it. So it does look awesome, at least for this. If you could try to imagine the K member gone, because it's getting the tubular member from AJE. If you could imagine, the rust over there gone, and over here, we're gonna strip it all, don't worry. Get the brake lines removed, move the brake lines in, try to smooth out as much of the firewall as we can, and then I gotta start working on this side. So that's gonna be a chore. That's for another time. I'm not gonna put that on video because I've already done one side. I'll handle the other side myself, but once the other side is done and all the metal work is done, we'll do a good seam seal on all the seams, putty, body work, and get it really smooth and flat. Get it ready for a coat of paint. This is the fun part. This is the fun work, because I can come out here, work on it a day at a time, hour or two here and there. I knocked it out like 6 hours, something like that Saturday, 4 or 5 hours Sunday. It's not easy. And only because I was taking my time and learning how to do it, and I want to do it right. So, and not to mention I had to replace, the channel down there. So that side is not bad. We don't have to replace any part of that channel. It's going to go by much quicker. It's always faster the second time around. But I'm talking too much as always. I hope you guys are enjoying the progress here on Project EgoBruise. I got some cleanup to do in my garage. It needs to be cleaned, okay? It's just part of it. Every night before I go to bed or go inside, I clean the garage. So listen, guys, that's it. Hey, if you like this content, if you subscribe, it does actually sort of help me out. It helps the channel out. It helps what I do here. It's a ton of work editing video. It's a ton of work bringing the camera out when you're in the garage trying to get things done. So it helps. So hey, do that. And if you want to see all the exclusive behind the scenes crap, follow me on Instagram, because that's cool. Because if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see kind of the stuff that I'm working on before it comes out on YouTube. Give you a heads up. So that's it. We'll see y'all next time. Thank you for watching House of Dula.